Welcome everyone, it's Glacier Guy, Rock the Glacier as always. Is the 4th of August, and I just got back from Gen Con, so we're going to talk about my experience. And so this is my first time ever going to Gen Con. This is my second tabletop convention I've ever been to, if you want to loosely say that. But before those two, I'd only ever been to anime conventions, so it's kind of framing my mind around what we're talking about. And so growing up, I'd been to like Otakon on the East Coast, which was a really big anime convention. I don't know if they still do it. I think they do. I don't know if it's still in Baltimore. It was. It was on the sea. It was a really nice convention. I used to go there all the time. Went to a couple conventions in DC, and then eventually went to some conventions in California. Anime Expo. I went at least 2 years. And then in Japan, I actually been to an Anime Expo, which Anime Expo in Japan was more like a car show, where they were kind of showing the current new anime and what was coming in the years to come, and that was really fun. But there was no vendor hall in the Japan one, which is interesting, because at least in America, anime conventions are mostly vendor hall plus things. That's kind of how conventions seem to be in America, at least that I'm aware of. Conventions and events are slightly different. You can go to like a tournament or event, which is basically what the tournament and event are, and then have a vendor area maybe. But to me, in my mind, a convention is typically a vendor hall is the big part of the convention, and then the events and games are also there. So the difference between an event, competition, and convention, or conventions typically, are kind of framed around spending and buying things that you can't necessarily get normally without ordering them. And you kind of want to go there it's a one-stop shop. You can see new stuff. You can buy a whole bunch of products. You can see a vast array of products. And it's not super focused on one thing particularly. That's my idea of a convention. Different than an event or a competition. But anyways, let's kind of reframe back into where we're going. So, I didn't know what Gen Con was. Now, my wife has been invited to Gen Con several years in a row, long before we got married. One of her friends goes to Gen Con almost every year, and has been inviting her to Gen Con for a couple years, and she just wasn't able to go for whatever various reasons. And so this year, a couple months ago, about 6 months ago or 7 months ago, she goes, "Hey, I would finally like to go to Gen Con. I think we can go. Do you want to, like, can we go to Gen Con?" Because she doesn't really want to go to Gen Con by herself. And I was like, sure, we can go to Gen Con. I did a very basic look. I probably should have done a lot more research into what Gen Con was. I knew it wasn't a Warhammer exclusive convention, because the only other tabletop convention I'd ever actually been to before this was Warhammer Fest 2015 in Coventry. I think it was Coventry. It was in England itself. I actually went up to England to go to Warhammer World and actually ended up at a convention a couple train stops over from Nottingham. So the only other wargaming convention I'd ever been to was a Warhammer specific Warhammer Fest. And that really actually framed my expectations, and I wish I would, and it was a subconscious thing because I didn't even think about it until I got to this convention. I knew they were going to have an official Warhammer booth, and so I remembered back to Warhammer Fest. At least I subconsciously remembered, and I was like, at Warhammer Fest and at Warhammer. So at Warhammer World, you can get everything. If you've ever been there, you can get pretty much every model you ever want. If they don't have it right there, the factory's around the corner. They can order it, and you'll show up, and everything will be all, you'll get what you want. You might not walk away with it that day, but it'll be shipped to you no cost. Because at least when I was there, they did no cost shipping for orders that were bought in person. And they were like, yeah, we'll ship it anywhere in the world for free because you're buying it here in person, which is, I thought was kind of cool. I don't know if they still do that. Hopefully they do. And I remember, I think I bought 9 chimeras or something crazy like that, but they didn't have them all. But either way. So I remember, and so when I went to the Warhammer Fest down the street, or not air quotes down the street, but a couple train rides down the road, they had a lot of Forge World at Warhammer Fest, and that kind of frames my thought of when I came to Gen Con. I knew they had a Warhammer booth at Gen Con. I knew they had some Warhammer events. We tried to get some tickets in the beginning for a couple months ago when tickets opened up. We were trying to get tickets to some Warhammer events. My wife has a Sisters of Battle army, and there was a period of time where she signed up for 1K, I think 1K duels or 1K tournament, or 1,500 points, something like that. And so I was frantically painting Sisters of Battle, but then when the tickets dropped, she didn't get any of the Warhammer 40K events, and so once she didn't get any 40K events, I stopped focusing so hard on the Sisters of Battle. Kind of took a break of it, off of it. She asked if I wanted to play in any 40K events. She tried to get me a ticket or two for an event. At the time, I didn't have an army ready, but I could have gotten probably one of my guard armies ready enough. I think I could have been able to bring my Steel Legion, and I would have had to play a few practice games. But I could have brought them and I could have played. But we didn't get any tickets to any 40K events, which shaped my planning. Because we didn't get any tickets, I didn't bring any models. And I was mostly focused, but we did get tickets to Flamecraft. Now, Flamecraft is tabletop little dragons. It's a very fun game. It's a very cute game. We had tried to play it a few times, but the rules were a little confusing. The tutorial videos were very confusing. So she got Flamecraft event tickets so we can really learn actually how to play the game from the people that are either had developed the game or they work for the company, or at least they know how to play the game. So we got some events for that. So that was cool. We did get some D&D events, but we didn't get D&D event tickets that were set until like late Sunday, but we knew we were already leaving Sunday morning, so we weren't going to do the D&D stuff, which is it's okay, it's fine. Flamecraft was one of the main reasons we kind of wanted to go, among being able for her to see a friend that she hasn't seen in a while, and just to kind of go to the con. And I knew that I thought maybe they were going to have some cool 40K stuff. We drive. It was about a 13-hour trip from start to finish. It wasn't 13 hours of total driving. It was just 13 hours total. We did drive the way there. It was a pretty nice drive. I did take a wrong turn, and the GPS, instead of telling me to do a U-turn, the GPS is like, just keep going. And then in the whole Ohio driving experience, Ohio has a bunch of side roads. And either way, we did get to drive through a lot of Old Town USA, which I thought was kind of cool, kind of iconic. One of the old towns we went through was definitely like ripped out of central casting. Like, it looked like it could have had the Gilmore Girls. It could have been the set almost. Another one was a little bit bigger, but they still had old school feel. And like one of the towns was had like a small town hall. Either way, I'm getting off on a tangent. We get to Gen Con. Get in our hotel, do our meet and greets, and then we go, okay, so what is the plan? Now, day one, we're like, all right, we're going to go to the vendor hall. Vendor hall opens at 10. So typically when you get there, we got there on a Wednesday. If you're going to a convention, you're going to stay for multiple days. You typically want to hit the vendor hall first. And the idea behind hitting the vendor hall first is because you will get first dibs of anything that's limited edition, anything that's limited supply, anything that they only have one or two of. You want to kind of get there, and as soon as vendor hall opens up, you want to get in there and get it quickly. Because a lot of conventions, at least in America, are they have like a pre-event day on Wednesday. Sometimes if you pay a lot of money, but most of the time they will start Thursday or Friday. And then, so you want to go Thursday or Friday. You want to go the first day of the first, whatever the first day of the convention is. You go there, get the vendor hall, buy what you want to buy on the first day, and then do all your events on the other days, if you can swing that. And then, because the reason why is a lot of the local people will only buy Saturday tickets, or people that can't get off work. They'll mostly just buy the weekend ticket. There was one guy in line who only had a Thursday ticket because he only wanted to do the vendor hall. He didn't want to do any events. So you get there, we're waiting in line. We're waiting in line for 3 hours. And then there's a big wave. We get into the store. We get into the vendor hall. Opens up, and there is thousands of booths. Several hundred at least. It's a huge area, and it reminded me so much of Anime Expo and Otakon that I was just I felt like, oh, I know where I'm at. And my goal was, what I wanted to get was a Thunderhawk gunship, which is a Forward World exclusive model that's been out of stock for a couple months. A couple weeks at least. I when it was in stock, I wasn't going to buy it. Now that I was like, oh, maybe I should buy that. It's out of stock. As soon as I want to buy something, it's out of stock. And I was like, okay, well, I want to get a Thunderhawk and 3 Defilers because the Defilers have also been in stock. And I was thinking, okay, if this is a GW, if this is a Games Workshop booth, they should have these models. I was completely wrong. But I did tell myself, I was like, if they don't have them, that's fine. I'm not buying any other models. I don't need any other models. The Thunderhawk is something that's rare, and I was like, I'm going to Gen Con. Sure, I'll buy it there if they have it. They had no Defilers, and I go right. Vendor Hall doors open up. I beeline it straight to the Games Workshop booth. I go right there. I'm looking. They have a big Forge World-ish section because they don't really call it Forge World anymore, but they have the Forge World. They have the resin section. They had a lot of Primarchs. Basically, I think they had 2 or 3 of every Primarch. They have no Thunderhawk. And I go, and then I look over, where they have the Chaos Space Marines, no Defilers. And so I go over the counter, it's really busy, and I'm like, do you have the Thunderhawk? And they're like, no, I only have 3 Warhound Titan bodies. And I saw the bodies, and I was like, it's not what I want. They don't want a Warhound Titan body. Like the Warhound, it's an iconic miniature, and at some point maybe I will own one, but it's just a pair of legs with 2 big guns. I would rather take two super heavy battle tanks. I'd rather take a Shadow Sword and a Stormlord. I'd rather take those guard tanks that are made of plastic than take a resin Warhound Titan. And that's just me. So Warhound Titan, so of all of the Titans that exist, the only Titan that even I would remotely consider wanting to buy is a Warlord Titan because I really like the giant guns on his shoulder that he can take, or a Tau Titan because I think the Tau Nar is just cool looking. But the Warhound Titan, it's not offensive enough for what I think it would be. Also, I just built the Capital Imperialis. I have one of the rarest printed Titans that exists. Like it's not a Titan, but it's definitely bigger than a Warhound or 2 Warhounds. And I think it might be taller or the same height as a Warlord. At some point, maybe I'll get a Warlord Titan. We'll be able to figure it out. But I was like, nope, I want a Thunderhawk. That's all I want. And then I was like, do you have any Defilers? And he goes, we should. And I look over, and I think he got the Defiler mixed up with the Forge Fiend and Mauler Fiend. They did not have any Defilers. Had I thought about it, I could have got the Admech Walker because you could kit bash the Admech Walker into a Defiler if you really, really wanted. You could take you could possibly take a Greater Unclean one or a Rotkin or something and stick it on there. Either way, there's a way you could probably make it work. But I really wanted 3 Defilers because I wanted the 3 kits. I have a feeling that hopefully at some point we're going to get a replacement for the Defiler. We're going to get a new kit, which would be cool. But anyways, all right. So no Thunderhawk, no Defilers. Already realized I'm not buying any models. My second target was to go to Monument Hobbies because I needed a Type 00. So I have been using Monument Hobbies brushes for a couple of years. I used to be exclusively only using GW brushes plus Winsor & Newton 00s I think 00s or single zeros for fine details. I was mostly using just GW brushes, and the reason why is because I could get them pretty much everywhere. And then I had one day, I just had a bad batch of GW brushes, and I really liked their new synthetic line. They're new. It's not new anymore. I really liked their synthetic line. I switched from their sable to the synthetics, but then I was having a hard time getting certain sizes, or I would use the small base brush a lot, and that brush, it kept warping a lot. And so I was like, you know what, I was in Arizona, and I saw Monument Hobbies. I was up at Gamers Guild, which is near Monument Hobbies, wherever they make their stuff. And I just picked up their brushes. I started using them. They were relatively affordable. They shipped pretty quickly. And so I was like, you know what, I'll stick with these. So I started using Monument Hobbies brushes, not exclusively, but mostly. I still use some Citadel brushes for certain things. And I'll use makeup brushes or whatever for other things. And so I was like, what I like to do is I like to have a brush that I'm using, and I like to have at least one spare. And I knew that I had a couple spare ones and a couple spare size twos, but I have only one unused 00. So I was like, okay, I need one 00, and I need one X10, which is like a smaller one, and then I needed one size 4 because I only had one size 4. I didn't have a backup for size 4s, but I don't use size 4 very often, especially unless I'm doing big vehicles or big stuff like that. So I didn't really need more than the one size 4. So I needed 3 brushes, and I know I needed, I think brushes were all I needed. And so I go straight from, so when I'm walking around the Warhammer booth, and my poor wife is like, she's getting overwhelmed. There's just so much going on. She hasn't been to a convention, I don't believe, ever. She wanted to go. She wanted to see what it was like, but she's just like, it's so many people running around crazy. She doesn't know what she wants to look at. She doesn't know what she wants to see. And either way, so I was like, all right, they don't have anything Warhammer. Cool, let's go. Let's go right to the Monument Hobby booth. So it's the exact opposite side of the convention. Of course it is. So we go all the way over there. I walk up to the booth, and I'm like, do you have single brushes? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, I need a 00, an X10, and a 5. I said 5, but it turns out they don't have a 5. They have 4, so I wrote down 5 wrong. And she's like, we don't have a 00 in single. And then she's like, but we do have a 00 in the Dauntless set, which is their new set, which is their cheaper set. And I haven't used them yet. I'm skeptical because they have their Sable line, then they have their Pro Synthetic line, and now they have their Dauntless, which is supposed to be cheaper. I'll test them out. I'll see how the Dauntless works. If I like them, cool. I'll add them to my rotation. Maybe they'll be good for terrain or whatever. But if I don't like the Dauntless set, I'm not going to buy them. Even if they're cheaper than the Pro Series, I like how the Pro Series works, so I'm going to keep using them. And then I was like, cool. And then I noticed they had the Pro Acryl amp color set. Oh, anyways, let me just flip over to this. Okay. And so I know they had the Pro. I saw the amp color set, and I was looking at the colors in the set. And there's some of these that I'd wanted to try. Yeah, so there's like a little dark navy blue. I think steel is one of the ones I really wanted to try. And we got a couple other gray green and things like that. So I was like, and then we do have a is it Payne's Gray? There's a Payne's Gray wash. So these are some colors I wanted to try. And they're right there, and I was like, I'm at a convention, I'm already here. I don't see these in any of my local stores because none of my local stores carry Monument Hobbies, which is a sad thing. They all carry, bizarrely enough, I think every one of them carries two thin coats. And had I not switched to Pro Acryl, I might have thought about two thin coats. But the one thing I like about Pro Acryl is you can buy everything in sets. And so I bought my wife got me the big master set, and so it's either way. So I got these two amp color sets. I'm gonna try these colors out as they come up. I'm not going to make a specific model. I'm not going to pick a specific model that's going to call for these. So, got the Pro Acryl sets, got the Dauntless brushes, got a couple of these, and then I was like, what's with the tubes? They had switched their texture paint, which I started using their texture paint for bases. They had switched using pots, and going to tubes, which I'm like, that's genius, because having to scrape out of the bottom of the tub always sucks. And so I was like, cool, awesome. So I got the nice little squeeze tube, and then I grabbed a white. And then you got this other color, which I'm assuming it's like a mixed metallic called Wizard Butt. And so I got another white because I always like their white. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. We'll get a Wizard Butt. So we did. So they got a free paint. And at that point, I was like, we could walk the hall just to see what they have, but there's nothing we need. And we were like, I think we did a little, like a little walk, like kind of walked around a little bit, but it wasn't a crazy walk. We were just kind of like, not a big deal. So we went to, we went and looked at a couple of, we found out where our games for Flamecraft were going to be, and then we went and got some food. Went and got lunch because we'd been waiting in line for 3 hours. Went and got lunch, and then later on came back when it was a little less crowded. When it was like 4 o'clock, it was crowded the whole time, but it was a little less crowded around 4 o'clock. It wasn't so crazy. And we went through and kind of walk through the booth. And she got to see more things. It was still very crowded, but she got to kind of like eye figure out. She did pick up one or two cute little sounding card games. Nothing super expensive, but like there's like a boba tea game. She's really into cutesy things, and she was having a pretty good time. And then what was it? So Saturday was was it Friday? Hold on. Okay, so we got there on Thursday. We had no Thursday events. We had a Friday event, and then we didn't have a Saturday event, but we did have no. I would take that back. We had a Friday event and a Saturday evening event, or was it a Thursday event? I think it was never mind. Our first event was Thursday night, and so we have to go back for our event. So we go back and we do our Flamecraft event, and we had a great time. We finally learned how to play. Everything was awesome. At some point on Friday, I went and I picked up these Tufts. And so I use Gamer's Grass for most of my Tufts. But I'll also use Army Painter for my Tufts. I'll also buy random no-name Tufts off Amazon. Whatever I can find. And so there's not... Like I said, my local hobby stores, they have some GW Tufts, which are rare, but they get them in every once in a while. I don't really use the GW Tufts. I think I still have some Statigrass from them, but I don't use their Tufts. I have used Gamer's Grass Tufts almost exclusively for a few years, but I'm running low on them. And so I'm like, I'm going to look at some Tufts. And I saw these small ones, and I like the small Tufts more than the tall ones for like infantry models. And so I'm like, oh. Okay, and yes, they're $9.50 a box. And I'm like, I'm at a convention, whatever. It's 100, 200 plus Tufts in here. Like there are 100 in the Overgrown, there's 200 of these ones. And so I was like, doesn't seem like a terrible cost. So I buy these 3 ones. And I think the spring flower mix looks awesome. Like, it doesn't look 40K at all, but I'm going to use it for my Mantis Warriors because I started adding flowers to almost all of my Tufts a year or two ago, and I think the flowers just add a little bit of like, hey, it's 40K, we're fighting in the grim darkness of the far future, but here's a cute flower. So I started buying flower Tufts. I think the spring mix looks hilarious, and I'm going to use it on my, I just said it, on my Mantis Warriors. I have 106 Mantis Warrior infantry models that I have to paint or assemble and paint, and there's 100 spring mixes in here. So some of them's not getting flowers. Some of them are going to get some normal grass Tufts, but we're going to use the flower Tufts wherever we can. I might cut a couple of Tufts in half so I have little flowers. But I picked these up, and now I had posted a picture about these on social media. And someone got really upset that I had spent $9.50 on the Tufts, and I was like, okay, all right. And they were like, Gamer's Grass is half the price. Gamer's Grass is not half the price. They are cheaper than what I paid. So math-wise, depending on what size Tufts you're trying to get, these ones were about. It was like 9 or 7 cents a Tuft. I think it was 7 cents a Tuft. The Gamer's Grass ones are 5 cents per Tuft, and I was like, it's fine. Like, if I was at a normal store, maybe I'd be annoyed about the cost, but like at a convention, I'll pay the extra $3. And I was trying to explain that it wasn't that big of a deal, and also I do use Gamer's Grass Tufts. I couldn't find them at this convention. I don't know if they were anywhere. I looked around. But Gen Con is not really a war gaming convention. It's a tabletop gaming convention that has some war gaming there. So, like, they're not really catering to us. Like I said, they're not catering to me. Let me change that fact around. They're probably catering well enough to 40K players, but they're not catering to me, and I'm very specific, and that's a bit neurotic. But anyways. So I felt these Tufts were fine. And now that I know that these ones exist, I might just order from this company online. And I'm not saying I'm never going to order Gamer's Grass, but all I have locally is Army Painter and GW. I don't have any Gamers Grass Tufts in this local area at any of my hobby stores, so I would have to order them anyways. So if these work out well, maybe I might buy these instead. I found out that these are out of Ohio. I think Gamers Grass is out of Europe, but I could be wrong. Not that that matters. Like, I'm not too worried about that. But if they're out of Ohio, I might get them faster. But we'll just see. I'm just going to use whatever I like, and these just happen to be there. And if I like them, I'm going to continue using them. I'll let you guys know if I like these. But for huge miniatures, is it? Let's see. Yeah, it's just called Huge Miniatures. Anyway, Badger did have a booth there. I didn't need anything for my Badger 105, so I didn't buy anything from them. Also, when I went up to the booth, there were two people at the Badger booth, and I was staring at their stuff for a long time. And this is the first booth I went to where they didn't talk to you. And so it was like you had to talk to them for them to talk to you, which is, I guess, fine. But I didn't need any needles or any airbrushes for Badger because right now my Eclipse is working. My Iwata Eclipse is working fine, and my Badger is working fine, and I keep my needles relatively clean, so I don't have to worry about it. But if I needed them, they had them there. Would have been cool. And then at some point, I went to Game Envy and got the Phalanx Series 00 brushes because I was worried that the Dauntless 00s might not be good enough, and I didn't want to not have a 00, and these were relatively affordable. They were like $9 a brush. I've been told they're very good. I will give them a try. So we might add the Phalanx into our rotation because I believe you can also mail order these from Game Envy. At some point, I did get some Gen Con swag. I got a hat. My wife got me this distressed hat. I do like wearing baseball caps. It is frayed, so it's pre-stressed, which is whatever. But I keep seeing the fray in the top right, so I might have to burn that down or cut it back or something like that. I don't mind the distressed look on the outside. It's just when I'm trying to look through the hat and I can see the distressedness, it's like, what is that? Is that a bug? I did get a Gen Con cup. I do like having these kind of like 16-ish ounce cups. I like to put some soda and some ice, and so yeah. And then at some point, I was talking about paint, and I was like, yeah, I do like Pro Acryl for the most part. I just don't like their black because I like using Abaddon black more than their black because their basic black is like charcoal more than black. And they're like, oh, well, you got to get the satin black. And I was like, what? So, and I was already tired. I was already exhausted. And I was like, I need to go back to the dealer's hall. So I had to beat skeet all the way back from the hotel to the dealer's hall, to the vendor hall, vendor dealer, whatever, exhibitor hall, whatever they want to call it. Go back there, go all the way back to Mountain Hobbies. And then I saw the satin paint sitting right there. It was right there on the shelf. But between me and the paint was an attendee talking to potential customers about their paints, and I couldn't reach across them. I was just standing there for what felt like forever, but it wasn't forever, but I felt like it was forever. It was only probably 2 minutes, maybe less, and I was just like, and then finally they all moved, and it was fine. I grabbed my one paint and I put it on the table, and I paid with cash, and I'm like, here you go. I just want the satin black. So we are going to find out if satin black is a suitable replacement for Abaddon black. And if it is a suitable replacement for Abaddon black, it might become the primary black that we use. Mostly just because I like the bottles that Pro Acryl come in. I like the Pro Acryl paint set so far. I'm never going to be one brand exclusive, but I would like to shift from Citadel to Pro Acryl if I could. I do like how Pro Acryl mix. I do like how they blend. But I'm not going to say exclusive. I do like the texture paints and washes that GW makes. I haven't used a lot of the washes, but now that I got more washes with the other sets, I might be able to use more of those washes. So that's be kind of cool. But that's what I got. These are all the things that I bought at Gen Con. So I did not really buy a whole lot. I spent like $153 plus. Well, my wife bought me these, but $200 to $300 on this. I don't have any pictures of what my wife got, but she did get So there's a game called Final Girl. Let me. I don't have a picture of it, but if you look it up, there's a single player board game. I guess board game, tabletop game would be. It's called Final Girl, where you play as the final girl in like a horror setting, like a movie, and she likes werewolves. She loves horror movies. She loves Final Girl movies. Last year, we had watched all of the Friday the 13th, except for one or two of them, in like a big marathon, and that was really fun. And this year, we've been watching one horror movie every week, leading up to Halloween. So that's really fun as well. And yeah, so it's been pretty fun. It's been pretty awesome. And we found the Final Girl booth, and they had a Final Girl like room where you could play and learn how to play. We ended up not doing that, but we did go to the Final Girl booth, and she was looking at it, and they had Series 1, 2, and 3. They're on, I think, Series 3 is the most recent one. And you can either buy the core set box by itself, the models by themselves, because they are models, but they are, I guess, they're slightly, I don't know what scale they are. They're not 28 millimeter. They're slightly smaller than that. They're thinner than that, but they're more for board game size. She's like, I could paint these minis. I was like, you could paint these minis. They're very tiny, but you could paint them if you really wanted to. It'd be fine. And I could paint some if you wanted me to. And so we might do that. But even you don't need the minis to play the game, because the core set comes with like the little tokens that would count as the killer. Anyways, so the whole concept behind Final Girl is you play as a Final Girl, and the concept that I understand, because we played only one game, is you have a killer, and sometimes the killer has minions, but you have a killer, and you have victims, and you have you. And your goal is to rescue as many victims as you can. One, because they help power you up. You gain resources from rescuing them. And two, that denies the killer from getting power. So as the killer kills victims, he or she or it gets stronger. And so you want to save them before the killer gets to you. It's a one-player game. I found out a fun thing to do with it is you can make a two-player by having the other player be the killer. The killer has to make certain decisions, like they have to move towards the closest victim in certain cases, or move towards the closest Final Girl. But if you're split in a decision of where you go, there's an overall series of rules in the game where you should pick the worst possible outcome for the Final Girl. You should pick the most realistic outcome, or you should pick the funniest. But if you have another player who could play the killer, then you can have that other player decide. There's not a whole lot of decision making for the killer itself, because the killer is like, I have to move towards the closest victim or Final Girl, but you can make that decision if you really wanted to. But it's designed to be a single player game. It's supposed to be an hour long. Now, I don't know how long it would take. We kind of played it over the course of a day or two. Well, over the course of like 2 days, because we played a lot. Because the first 2 turns, you're learning how to play. But after that, you kind of sort of get it. And then the turns get really quick. Like, there's a lot of decision making and trying to save all the victims, and it's really fun. It's a really fun game. Well, she knew the Series 1 box comes with a core set in it. Now, you can buy everything separate. You can buy the core set boxes separate. You can buy each individual horror scene separately. You can buy the miniatures separately. But they did have ultimate bundle boxes at the convention. So there was a Series 1, 2, and 3 bundle box. And then they had some exclusive convention characters for the Final Girls themselves. And I was like, well, you got to get Series 1. And she's like, well, yeah, you got it. It's got the core box in it. I'm like, of course. And you need the core box to play. You need the core box, and then the other boxes have like the different like VHSs, the different horror movies. And cool enough, you can swap the Final Girl from one movie, they're typically each one has 2 Final Girls, so you can swap the Final Girls and the monsters around, so you can play with like Friday the 13th-ish killer in like a poltergeist like building, and so you can mix and match and do whatever you want, and they have rules for that, and that's pretty fun and pretty almost not infinity, but almost infinity levels of gameplay and future play, and like you could potentially play a game where you have 2 killers. That'd be kind of cool. But Yeah, so it's supposed to take an hour. It took a lot longer than an hour. We also got very lucky with like the weapon selection and the items that we got, and potentially we might have been playing the motorboat a little easier because like you get the motorboat keys and it allows you to go anywhere the water touches, and so we were using it a lot, and it doesn't say it's single use, so I'm going to keep using it. I did say that like if the killer gets to the space, he can smash the boat, but that never happened. And yeah, so we played the first game, and my wife actually won. She actually killed the killer in the first game. She got really lucky. She almost died, and then she survived at the last second and managed to find a bow and managed to kite the killer around enough and stay just ahead of the killer enough to ping hearts away and kill the killer. So that was really fun. Yeah, so we got Final Girl Series 1, and Series 2 has werewolves in it. It has a werewolf one, and she really likes werewolves, so I was like, all right, I'll get to Series 2. And then I was like, why not also get Series 3? So I went on their website, looked it up, and all of their series were sold out on their website. Also, all of their series were more expensive because they were only $200 at the convention. They were more expensive on the website, so I was like, look, I didn't get any Warhammer models because I didn't have what I wanted. So let's just get all of these instead. And she's like, really? I was like, yeah, well, obviously you're going to buy 1. I'll buy you 2 and 3. And so that's what I did. Buy her 2 and 3. And then she got an exclusive model. And so either way, we got Final Girl, and it looks cool. And also, we learned how to play Flamecraft. We feel bad because we had missed one of our events. We were supposed to go back and play Flamecraft again Sunday. No, not Sunday. Saturday. We're supposed to go back and play Saturday evening, and we just got caught up with a bunch of other stuff. Also, we started to get the con crud a little bit, get a little sick. So we ended up getting food, and all of a sudden I'm like, it's 6:05, and our event fired off at 6, and we're like, oh, it's gonna take us like 25 minutes to get back to the convention. So we missed an event, and yeah. So overall, Gen Con for me was fun, but not for me. If I was ever to go, like, if it was only me and someone's like, hey, you want to go back to Gen Con? And it was only me, probably not. I probably would not go back to Gen Con. It's not really for a Warhammer 40K. It's also, I would much rather, realistically, I'd much rather have the time off, paint more models, do more stop motion, play more video games that I have at my house. I like. It's not that I'm anti-convention. It's just that, like, it's not my scene. It's not bad. Like, if my wife's like, we need to go, I don't think we're going to go back next year, but if like a year or two from now is like, hey, I want to go back to Gen Con, I think it's really fun. There's more Flamecraft stuff. There's more this, more Final Girl stuff. I'm like, okay, we'll go back. Like, 2 or 3 years from now, we could probably go back to Gen Con. If next year she's like, we need to go back to Gen Con, I'm like, we're flying, because you can fly to Indianapolis from here for way less than we spent. Well, probably not less than we spent for driving, but it'd be a lot better to just fly there, take an Uber to the hotel. We wouldn't have to pay for parking, and then it would mean that we'd buy less because we'd have to mail everything back. And so, no, kidding. I don't know if you guys see him. There's a cat. There's two cats. 2 cats. Both. There's Onyx. He's very old. And there's Lily. She is young-ish. I think she's like 5 or 6. He is a ripe 15. Also, I don't really like leaving my cats. Or my dog. No. But interesting enough, I actually ran into a YouTuber at Gen Con. I ran into Adam Smasher from it's like Tabletop Minions. So, funny enough, I was subscribed to him previously, and I don't know how, but at some point I got unsubscribed from him. I don't know why. I don't really do subscription purges anymore, but at one point I used to just kind of clean house, like if I wasn't following them anymore. I very rarely unfollow people, unless like their content gets boring, but maybe YouTube auto unsubscribed me, so I resubscribed to him because I'm walking through the hotel and I look over and I'm like, I know that guy. like I don't know him, but I know of him. I've seen him before. And so I went and did some shopping, got back, and as on my way back, I was like, "Are you from Tabletop Minions?" But I didn't know his name because I don't watch the channel enough, I went to the phone and looked him up. I was like, yes. And he's like, I am. He shook my hand. He asked me how the convention was going, and I'm like, it's not really my scene. I'm more of a 40K person, but my wife's been having a great time, and it's been pretty fun. And he told me that Gen Con used to be back in the 60s and 70s and 80s when it first was a thing in Wisconsin, that it used to be almost exclusively like war gaming, like Civil War era type stuff. But over the years, the war gaming converted it more into tabletop and board gaming, which I wonder if that's just kind of a sign of like, because I'm assuming, well, so he said it used to be a wargaming convention, which leads me to believe, and he did say a lot of Civil War and like those kind of like miniature Napoleonics, and so maybe it's the Napoleonics got less popular, and at some point maybe it was a big 40K thing, but as time went on, maybe 40K got less popular, but then eventually it just kind of morphed into more of a board game and RPG convention, which I don't know, maybe that's fine. Like obviously I'm not sour on that. There were 40K events. I just didn't get any tickets for them. And once again, perfectly fine. I'm not upset about not playing 40K. I don't play 40K much anyways. I mostly just paint, and I like doing stop motion when I can have the time and inspiration to do it. And there is Kitty Cat. So I met Adam Smasher. So that was cool. Apparently Vince V was there. I never ran into him. I didn't look for him. I don't know if he was doing an event or anything. So yeah, overall Gen Con was fun. One of the crazy things is down the street from Gen Con is another hobby store. I forget the name of it. Hold on. I'm going to look this up because like I need to mention these guys. Hold on. Let me go all the way back to Indianapolis with my phone. There we go. Indianapolis. Let's find the convention center. I was just at this store. The zoo. The Indianapolis Zoo. Really fun. Had a great time at the Indianapolis Zoo. Also went to the Toy Pit, and they had a lot of old toys. A lot of Star Wars, some Barbie, but they had a lot of like Transformers. So if you're looking for toys in Indianapolis, the Toy Pit, if you're a collector of those kind of toys and not model kits, they had some model kits, but they were mostly like Gundam. And they had like a very tiny section of like normal models. But you could, if you were going to look for like tanks and stuff, you'd want to go to like a normal model store. But the Toy Pit was kind of fun. Let's see, where is downtown Indianapolis? Very walkable, like that. That was nice. I bet you the convention center is crazy with like people cleaning up right now because the convention ended yesterday, so obviously the cleanup's got to be nuts. Let's see, down the street. Okay. This store was called Good Games Indianapolis, and they were running a sale on, it's called Gen Con sale, and all of their Warhammers 15% off, and they had a fire sale section, which I guess is normally 40% off, but for Gen Con it was all 50% off, and they had a Cities of Sigmar Army box set. Now I'd already painted one of those, and I love the concept of Cities of Sigmar, but I hate painting those models because they're way too detailed, and I fully assembled those damn models, and I should have sub-assembled them because they would have been a lot easier to paint. I didn't pick it up because I was like, I'm good. I don't need to paint any Cities of Sigmar anytime soon. And they had two Skeleton Horde Old World box sets, and they were 50% off, and I was like, I should have got one because for $145 I could have got some skeletons. But I was like, nope, I came here for only 4 models. I'm not buying any more. I'm sticking to my guns. Also, I'd already bought Final Girl at that point in time, and so I was like, I'm sticking to being fiscally responsible. They did have the Hive Storm Kill Team set with the Aquilons and the Vespids, and it was a good discount. And I was like, and it was already discounted from retail, and it had 50% off on top of that. And I almost got it. It would have been below retail, but I was like, I don't need it. It would have been cheaper to buy that box than it would be to buy those 2 kits separately. But I was like, I don't need it. I don't need it. So I didn't buy it. But then they had the Skaven Tide box, Somebody had ordered too much Skaventide. $100. $100 for the whole Skaventide box. I don't have a Skaven army. I have a Slaves to Darkness army and whatever came in that Cities of Sigmar box. That's all I got. Well, I do have enough to start a Maggotkin army, but not enough to like play a full Maggotkin. I have a Spearhead. I have a Maggotkin Spearhead, and then I have a couple other Nurgle stuff. But I don't have not Soul Blade Graveblades. I had a Soul Blade Graveblades army. I don't have anymore. Not the Celestial. What are those things called? The Fantasy Space Marines. I'm gonna forget, but they whatever comes in Skaventide, and I was like, $100 for Skaventide. So, the other thing I wanted to buy while I was there is another 6x4 gaming mat. Couldn't find any. I got recommended to go to look at a bunch of different brands, and they didn't have any 6x4s, which is fine. 6x4 is not even the GW table size anymore. I still play on 6x4. I still do stop motion on 6x4. I don't like the new smaller size. I don't like the new denser terrain. And so overall, Gen Con was fun. It's not really for me, but like I'm willing to go back. Hopefully not next year. Hopefully 2 years from now, because it was a lot of work and a lot of money. Not as much money as it could have been, but a lot of work for either way. But we had fun. We have a lot of Final Girl to play, and we might do some Final Girl content on the channel. I might record us playing a couple of games. We're going to play a few games, and I'm not sure. I'm not going to make any promises as to when Final Girl content will come out, but I did pitch it to my wife. I was like, we can play a couple games. We can figure out how to play this, and then maybe either myself or you or both of us, we could play together. I could be the killer. We can have some banter. We can make a couple hour-long videos, or however long it takes for the killer to kill the final girl, or the final girl to kill the killer. I think there are some scenarios where the killer can easily win. So we'll see how it goes. And then as far as future 40K content, I did get inspired to do one thing. So normal 40K tables competitively are very L-shaped ruin, line of sight blocking. They're not designed to look like a normal human city. They're not designed that way. They're not designed to look like a regular town. They're designed to look like a competitive shooter match play. Because you don't want to start the game and an enemy get blown off the board. In one of the final girls is basically based off of Nightmare of Elm Street, so they have something, instead they don't have Elm Street, they have Maple Street. And it's a whole street map with the different buildings. And so I was like, I kind of want to do a Nightmare on Elm Street board. I want to do a board where I go and find some printable buildings, either ruined or not ruined, printable houses, and then make like a street with like just like the center of the board be a long street, and then have the houses with the yards and everything, and then play a game of 40K on the Nightmare on Elm Street, and then maybe have some secret things inside each building. But huge long firing lanes down the main street. Maybe I'll put well, obviously the yards will have trees and stoplights and stuff. Maybe I'll put like broken down cars or something to like give you some line of sight blocking, but I want huge long firing lanes down the whole street. Maybe this might just be like Main Street USA instead of Elm Street, but I want to make like a piece of a section of a town, like a normal town, and then play 40K on that. Obviously with like 40K-esque buildings, I don't want to play them on like current. Oh, there goes Gavin. Anyways, those are the things I've been thinking about. It's been a long rant. Gamescom is fun. So NovaCon is at the end of the month. I might be able to go up on Saturday just to check it out. From what I understand, it looks like you can go to NovaCon without a ticket and still go to the vendor area and buy some stuff there. I don't plan on doing any events while I'm there, but it's a couple hours to drive up to DC, take the metro, whatever. So I might go up there just to kind of see what they have. Now that I've decided I want to live in this area permanently, hopefully, and not move every 2 or 3 years. We'll see. If I have to move at this point, I'm probably thinking Ohio, because weather there is pretty nice. I know I was in Indianapolis, but the weather in Ohio was also pretty good. But anyway, I'll probably stay where I'm at. But NovaCon, a couple hours away, and then like less than an hour away, there's another convention in October, more of a local convention. That one feels more Gen Con-ish with like tabletop board games and stuff, but they do have some wargaming there, so I might check out those conventions. I don't plan on doing a lot of conventions every year. Maybe one every other year, maybe one big one. But there are some small ones that are nearby, and I can go on a weekend, check it out, see what it is. But every hour I'm not painting is an hour I should be painting. And I know that's probably not a healthy thing to think about because, like, leisure is leisure. But I really want to get my backlog lower. So, other than that, I hope you guys had a great time, and I will see you next time.